It was 3 years of footage, 3 years of silence, 3 years of a man watching his neighbor through a lens, never saying a word to anyone about what he saw. And when the police finally sat down to review that hard drive, they didn't find evidence of a crime. They found a horror story so personal, so meticulously documented, that it changed the way they looked at human obsession forever. You are about to hear the story of a man who didn't just watch a tragedy unfold. He filmed it, he cataloged it, and for 3 years, he waited for the world to catch up to what he already knew. When you think of a bad neighbor, you probably imagine loud music at 2 in the morning, or a dog that won't stop barking, or maybe someone who lets their trash pile up on the curb. But the story you are about to hear has nothing to do with noise complaints. It has nothing to do with property lines or parking spots. This is a story about what happens when one person decides to turn their ordinary life into a silent, one-man investigation. And the subject of that investigation had no idea they were being watched every single day. The man behind the camera was a retired engineer named Robert. He lived alone in a quiet suburb outside of Chicago. His house was neat, his lawn was always mowed, and he kept to himself. On the surface, Robert was the kind of neighbor everyone wanted. Quiet, unassuming, harmless. But inside that house, behind those drawn blinds, Robert was building a library, a digital archive of the woman who lived next door. Her name was Sarah. She was in her late 30s, a single mother to a young boy named Eli, and she worked as a nurse at the local hospital. She was kind, she was generous, and she had no idea that Robert had been watching her since the day she moved in. Now, you might be thinking that this is a story about a stalker, and in a way, you would be right. But Robert was not the kind of stalker you see in the movies. He didn't leave notes on her doorstep. He didn't call her phone. He didn't follow her to the grocery store. Robert did something far more unsettling. He planted himself behind his window with a high-end digital camera equipped with a telephoto lens, and he recorded her life like a nature documentary. He recorded her coming home from work. He recorded her playing with Eli in the backyard. He recorded her watering her plants, checking her mail, and even the nights she sat alone on her porch staring up at the stars. 3 years of mundane, everyday moments, over 1,000 hours of footage, and not once did Robert ever speak to her. So why did he do it? What would drive a man to spend his retirement years obsessively filming a woman who barely knew he existed? The answer to that question is where this story goes from uncomfortable to deeply, deeply haunting. You see, Robert didn't just film Sarah because he was lonely. He filmed her because he was convinced that he was the only one paying attention. He genuinely believed that he was protecting her. In his mind, he wasn't a voyeur. He was a guardian angel. He had noticed something about Sarah that nobody else in the neighborhood had picked up on. And once he saw it, he couldn't unsee it. He noticed a pattern, a cycle, a quiet, invisible storm that was brewing right next door, and he was the only witness. 3 years into his secret project, Robert made a decision. He walked over to the police station, not with a confession, but with a hard drive. He told the officers at the front desk that he had important evidence regarding his neighbor. He said he had been documenting a situation that he believed was going to end in tragedy. And when the detectives hooked up that hard drive to their computer, they were not prepared for what they found. At first, the footage was exactly what Robert described. Just a woman living her life. The detectives were confused. They were annoyed. They thought Robert was just a paranoid old man wasting their time. But then they started noticing the smaller details. The way Sarah would come home some days looking exhausted. The way she would check her car doors multiple times. The way she would occasionally glance over her shoulder when she was in her own backyard. They noticed that Robert had organized his footage by date, by mood, and even by color-coded folders. It was obsessive, it was detailed, and it was terrifying. But the real shock came when they reached the footage from the last month of Sarah's life. That was when they saw him. A man that Robert had been tracking for over a year without ever catching his face. A man who would appear in the frame during the late hours of the night. He would walk past Sarah's house. He would pause at her fence. He would just stand there, motionless, staring at her bedroom window. Robert had filmed this same man over 40 times. 40 times. And not once had he called the police to report it. He didn't intervene. He didn't go outside. He just kept rolling the tape. The detectives were furious. They asked Robert why he hadn't spoken up sooner, and his answer sent chills down their spines. He said he needed to document everything first. He said he needed to understand the full picture. He told them that he didn't want to jump to conclusions. He wanted proof. Absolute, undeniable proof. And he had it. That footage eventually led to an arrest. That man, the one standing in the shadows, was a former patient of Sarah's from the hospital. He had developed an obsession with her, and he had been planning to confront her for months. The police stopped him before he could act. They arrested him. The media called Robert a hero. They praised his vigilance. They hailed him as a man who stopped a tragedy before it happened. But if you ask me, that is where this story gets its darkest twist. Because Robert didn't just film the crime. He filmed the warning signs. He filmed the stalker. He filmed everything leading up to that moment. And he still waited 3 years to do anything about it. Do you want to know the real reason why? It wasn't because he was scared. It wasn't because he didn't know what to do. It was because Robert enjoyed it. He enjoyed having a secret. He enjoyed being the only one who knew what was happening. He enjoyed the power of holding that information over a woman who had no idea she was being watched, both by a stalker and by him. The footage wasn't just evidence. It was his hobby. It was his purpose. It was the only thing that made him feel important. When the police investigated Robert's home, they found journals, hundreds of pages of notes. He had written down Sarah's daily schedule. He had written down her moods. He had even written down theories about who she was dating, what she was eating, and what she was dreaming about. He had built an entire fantasy world around this woman, and the camera was his portal into it. He didn't save Sarah because he was a good person. He saved her because he wanted to keep watching her. He wanted to keep the show running. That is the part of this case that still haunts the detectives who worked it. The stalker was bad. The stalker was dangerous. But Robert was something else entirely. He was the man who watched a fire burn for 3 years, holding the only bucket of water just to see if someone else would notice first. We like to think that heroes are obvious. We like to think that the good guys wear white hats and the bad guys are easy to spot. But the truth is, sometimes the hero and the villain are the same person. Sometimes the person who saves you is also the person who was willing to let you drown just so they could feel alive. Robert never hurt Sarah. He never touched her. But he watched her. He watched her every move. He watched her fears. He watched her pain. And he only stepped in when he was ready, not when she needed him. So, what does that make him? Is he a savior? Is he a stalker? Or is he something in between? A man who blurred the lines so completely that the truth became irrelevant? Sarah moved away after the arrest. She never saw Robert again. She doesn't know about the journals. She doesn't know about the 3 years of footage. The police never told her. They didn't want to traumatize her any further. They let her believe that the only danger came from the man in the shadows, not the man behind the window. And maybe that was for the best. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, I wonder if she ever felt those eyes on her. I wonder if she ever felt the weight of that lens, that unblinking eye, that secret keeper who was always just a few feet away. This story doesn't have a happy ending. It doesn't have a clear moral. It just has a question that lingers in the air long after the final frame. If someone is watching you, and they never tell you, are they really protecting you? Or are they just protecting their own reason for waking up in the morning? Before you go, take a moment to think about your own neighborhood. Think about the people who live next door, the people you wave to, the people you never really know, because the scariest monsters aren't the ones that jump out of the dark. They are the ones who sit in the light with a camera in their hands and a smile on their face, waiting for you to make a mistake. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We cover stories just like this one every week, stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the people around you. And leave a comment down below. I want to know, would you want to know if your neighbor was watching you? Or is ignorance truly bliss? Let me know, and I will see you in the next one.